1. Worked at a major department store at the returns desk. One time I had a lady come up to me with a pair of clearly worn boots, and I mean worn, like the color and soles had taken a major beating. She's insisting she bought them here, and wanted to exchange them for the same boots but in a different color. I go to scan the boot and lo and behold, the style isn't even in our system. Now I also worked in the shoe department, and knew all the boots that we had by heart. I thought the boot looked similar to what we had, but was definitely not the same. Different style name, a color I had never seen that boot in. At that moment, as I was trying to figure out where the boot had come from, I noticed that they smelled. No way I was going to let her get away with returning them in that condition, even if I could figure out what they were. But I'm not a confrontational person, and this lady was already getting a bit too intense for me. I also had a line starting to form, so I made up some excuse about needing the manager, since the boots weren't coming up in the system correctly, and told her to go see if she could find the boots she claimed she knew we had in the color and size she needed. I called the manager up and started helping the next customer. Lucky for me, but not so much for this lady. The strictest manager comes over. I'm thinking that there's no way she's buying this customer's BS. The customer comes back with another pair of boots. I take one look at them and suddenly realize what's happening. The lady was trying to return last year's style. The company had basically recreated the same boot with some detail changes and a name change for the new season. I explained this to both the lady and manager once I finish helping the other customer. The lady argues that they still count as the same shoe because they look similar, and argues she should get an even exchange regardless. The manager makes a point of saying that she doesn't want to touch the boots the lady's trying to return because she can tell they've been worn, but then does something that I couldn't believe. The manager offered to give the lady $5 for them to use towards the other pair. That might not seem like a lot, but is a lot more generous than I would have been considering the age and shape of these things. I especially didn't expect this from that manager. She never let anything slide. I'm sitting there in absolute shock that she's even taking this lady seriously. I'm also thinking, oh man, that lady really lucked out. But she didn't feel the same way. Lady is flabbergasted that she isn't getting a new pair of boots for nothing. After going back and forth with the manager for a while, the lady slides the shoes across the counter at us and exclaims,
"Well, you might as well donate them then. I'm not going to wear them, and I don't want $5 for them."
And she storms off. I was like, first of all, you've already worn them. Second, $5 is better than nothing, so why wouldn't you at least take that? And third, these aren't getting donated, they're gross. They're going to be thrown away. Might as well take the $5 for giving away your old shoes. 2. So this happened over a year ago, but I just remembered it after a friend asked about work stories. We haven't talked in a while. When I remembered this, I started laughing. Okay, so it's, if I remember right, Saturday morning. At the time, I didn't usually work weekend mornings, but we were short-staffed. I was new to being a manager on duty, so I'm somewhat nervous, and on top of that, I usually work the night shift. Some of the customers we had were ones I'd seen before. Here comes customer 1, change in hand, and 1 bag of chips. They hand me the chips, I scan them, and they freak out.
Hey, excuse me. Your ad said those should have been $2.50. I'm not paying $3 for 1 bag. You need to adjust the price. That's false advertising. That price is outrageous.
So I say, I'm sorry, ma'am, can you show me where it says this? If it's true, I'll honor it. We go to the aisle where she claimed the ad was. The ad actually said 2 for $5. She points at the ad, grabs it off the shelf, and holds it about 5 inches from my face. I have a bit of a temper, but trying to be professional, I take the ad and explain. Ma'am, this says 2 bags for $5. In order for the bag to cost $2.50, you need to buy 2. If you only buy 1, it's the regular price.
That's false advertising. How was I supposed to know that? There's nothing on here that says that. I want your manager. I know she'll fix it. She always fixes stuff like this.
Yes, ma'am. I'll have her up here in just a minute. I say, calling her up front to tell this woman the ad isn't wrong. A minute or two goes by, but my manager isn't on her way yet. I call her again, and she says she's busy with a truck. I tell the customer my manager can't get away from the truck as quick as possible, realizing my situation. Her face immediately turns from puppy happy to unyielding rage. At this point, I want to just change the price so she'll leave, but we can't change prices for an ad that isn't wrong. She's staring me down, demands a price change or my manager, and is now holding up my line of 3 people. Here's the explosion. "Excuse me, ma'am, there are customers waiting behind you. Would you mind stepping to the side so I can help them? I'm sure the manager won't be much longer."
That's ridiculous. You're not even finished helping me. Hold on.
She pulls out her cell phone and calls her husband.
Baby, these people aren't doing their job. I need to use the bathroom, and I need you to hold my place in line. Can you please step in here for a bit?
I guess he agreed because he walked in shortly after. She leaves, I assume to get manager 1 with a bathroom break as an excuse. Her husband stands there for a few seconds and asks me, "So what part of your job you're not doing? She's been a bit of a bitch lately, and I'd like to know." I explain how she wants a price change on something that was advertised correctly. It's store policy to avoid doing so, and she won't take no for an answer, and demanding my manager fix it for her. "Well, how much is she short? 45 cents, 60 cents? If it's that much of a difference, I'll pay it. Seems like a nice boy. Must be new too, since I've never seen you here before." I've been here almost 5 months now, and I usually work the night shift. I tell him as I'm ringing up the people behind him. We've been short since someone quit, so I'm filling in during the day for now. Long story. He laughs, and then my store phone rings. Apparently his wife is now demanding a price cut from my manager in the back. My manager called me to put her husband on the phone. I hand him the phone, turned to check a text message since my line was empty, and I heard some words that still make me laugh randomly when I think about them. "Woman, you don't get your ass up here and pay this boy for these chips, I'll beat your ass till it's a color the shrimp can't see. If I gotta go back there, this boy's getting a lick too. You're grown, so act like it." I'm laughing so hard I dropped my phone. Luckily, she came up front. My manager came out with her since the truck was checked in now. The husband hands me her chips again so I can scan them and tell her the price. She's so red at this point, I'm just waiting to get called every curse word, slur, and insult under the sun. She looked truly defeated that we couldn't knock off $1.11, I think, from some stupid chips. She walks to their car. But the husband stays. He gave me a $20 tip. 3. I used to work at a food delivery establishment. One day I was covering a manager at another location. I had subbed at this location before, so I knew the area and employees. I'm used to people calling in angry because the website would say that they were outside of our delivery area. We had a small delivery area for a reason. On this day, I had answered the phone to take Karen's order. She was outside the delivery area by 2 blocks. This location had recently been docked on a corporate audit due to too many out-of-area deliveries. Of course she was furious.
I always get delivery from this store. I'm an excellent tipper. My babies are hungry. How dare you not feed them?
I explained to her quite calmly that if she wanted her food, she was more than welcome to place a pick-up order, and the food would be ready when she got there. She raged at me for a bit, but placed the order anyway. She came in, paid, picked up her food, and left. She made some nasty comments, but I had completed the transaction and moved on. I thought we were done. I was taking another delivery phone call when I hear Karen scream for the manager. I informed her that was me, and I would be right with her after completing the order. I turned back to the order screen to finish a customer transaction when I see a hand reach for the phone and press the tab thing that ends the phone call. I turned around and see my employees just staring at this woman who has walked behind the counter and cornered me. She was screaming at me about suing me and the business. She said that she had called the cops on me and that I was personally going to jail. Karen starts demanding that I pay for her car. I was a bit confused, so I stepped outside to look at her car. As soon as the door opened, I was hit by a gust of wind. I look over and see a bright red BMW with one of our very heavy umbrellas upside down in the front windshield. Karen keeps screaming at me, I poke my head inside and call some employees out to take the other umbrellas inside so that it doesn't happen to a decent person's car. The officer pulls up shortly after the other umbrellas were taken in. Karen screams. Officer takes notes. I just stand there wondering how long this will take. As Karen starts pointing at me and demanding I be arrested, the officer looks up and sighs. Miss, I cannot arrest this girl. She did not do anything to you or your car. The wind picked up the umbrella. This was an act of God. No one can be blamed for this.
She did this. If this bitch had just delivered to me like she was supposed to, I never would have had to drive up here. She knew this would happen.
I ignored Karen's rant, looked at the officer and said, So, I have done nothing wrong? I have to get back to shift change inside so my employees can go home? The officer just nodded at me while Karen continued screaming. I gave a polite half bow, a big smile, and said, Thanks, hope that you guys' day gets better. You can keep the umbrella. Turned on my heel, walked back inside. She tried to follow me in, but the officer stopped her. When she left, she threw the umbrella against the shop front window. She was too weak to actually do any damage, but I guess it made her feel better. I cleaned up the broken glass all over the sidewalk because I didn't think it was right to make my employees clean up my mess. In a way, Karen was right. It was my fault. I could have placed a manager override and delivered to her. I really should have put the umbrellas away much earlier in the day. Really, though, if she wasn't such a Karen, karma wouldn't have come for her that day. Although, to be clear, I'm not blaming myself for what happened to her. She totally brought that upon herself. I was just pointing out that I may have had a hand in the steps that led up to what happened. I don't blame myself, though. It was 100% awesome. I feel zero guilt. I don't take pride in what happened either. I just feel like I should always cherish this bit of time, where the universe finally worked the way it was supposed to. 4. I used to work in a liquor store in the California town I live in. By the way, in California, a lot of the businesses called liquor stores are really convenient stores with a large selection of alcohol. At about 9:30 p.m. on an evening I was to close up at 11 p.m., a young man came in asking for cigarettes. This fellow looked about 14, so of course I asked him for identification. He produced a driver's license indicating he was turning 18 the next day. By the way, the minimum age for purchasing tobacco in California is now 21, but was 18 at the time. I handed the young man his license back and said something to the tune of, "Nice try, but no can do." He indignantly pointed out that in 2.5 hours it would be legal for him to buy tobacco, and he would not be any more mature in 2.5 hours. I smirked and said something to the effect of, "I'm closing at 11, but if you can find a shop in the area that stocks cigarettes that's still open at midnight, more power to you." I'd never been happier in my life to see a customer storm off. The next morning I called the shop because I wanted to speak to the owner. She said that she was literally just about to call me. I told my boss that I suspected that the authorities had sent in a decoy the night before, but I assured her that if that was the case, I passed the test. The owner told me that she'd already gotten a call informing her that the young man I just mentioned was a decoy, and that I had done the right thing. My boss thanked me profusely and gave me a small bonus. So the moral of this story is that it does pay to do what's right. 5. I do feel kind of bad about this one now, but it happened a few years ago, and it's a funny story to tell, so what the heck. I used to be a shift manager at a collectibles store where we sold a lot of used movies, games, figurines, etc. The kind of place that old-school collectors drool over. So we saw our fair share of enthusiasts coming along. A lot of them were really nice, passionate people that were just jazzed as hell that they had a local place to look for rarities. Often chatty, often super not aware of how much time they were taking from staff by striking up a conversation. But it was both good for business and super fun to oblige these people when they come in, so we often did. We had a guy who for a period of a few months would come in about once a week to look at the cartridge games. The thing to know about our cartridge games is that they were all on display in large glass cases, which, if you wanted to sift through them, required an employee to wait with you to prevent theft. Some stuff in those cases was worth hundreds of dollars. Not typically a big problem, but this guy often bought items in bulk and had very particular tastes. I'm not sure if he was a reseller, which we sometimes saw, or an honest-to-goodness collector, but he'd only ever buy bags of our cheapest stock. Every week he'd come in and request someone open each case one by one, and he could spend 45 minutes to an hour just browsing through titles. This wouldn't have been the biggest steal, but we typically only had 3 or 4 people working, and this store could get pretty busy on evenings and weekends. Going from 2 cashiers to 1 cashier made a big difference. We would end up getting swallowed by the late-day rush without one of our staff members, so consistently that we started making a policy just for this guy, where he could leave his ID at the counter with us as collateral and browse through the games unattended. However, this didn't stop other people from nabbing stuff while he wasn't looking, so it wasn't a sustainable option. Along with spending forever browsing, this guy also took an eternity to check out. He would group the games up by price, type his estimated cost onto a calculator, add tax. Then when you ring it up, he'd argue with you about how, No, this isn't what I got, look at this, and show you the calculator and explain the math, as if any of this was manually calculated by us, which was basically always wrong. To his credit, sometimes discounts had to be manually added to certain items, that I know at least one newbie forgot to do, but in general, most of the time the computer would generate the correct price and he'd argue it. I didn't like him coming in and causing backups, especially because he was rude to my staff when he did it. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. On a day when I was shift leader, I saw him enter the store. I pulled aside one of my cashiers and told him to just help the guy as usual, then let me ring him up. My employee got the idea and did as I asked, walking our regular to the cabinets and babysitting him for nearly an hour. Luckily, it was early afternoon and we weren't terribly busy. When the customer finally got to the counter, he had a basket full of items, stacked them up, and I hopped in front of the computer. He started punching all of his values into the calculator and got right to work telling me about how much each thing should be and what the total should come out to. I put on my best customer service smile and said, "Of course, sir. I want to make sure that you're getting everything exactly as calculated, so we can go down the items together and make sure everything rings up correctly." Our computers ran on a system that would automatically scan a price and generate the number. But for things like specialty sales and discounts for items that didn't have their own product entry, it was possible for a manager to key in a manual price for any item scanned, even if it was the same price. So that's exactly what I did for each item, reading the price out slowly to him to make sure he heard it. And he had 118 items. I went down each old cartridge, clearly stating and typing them: $1.99, $2.99, $1.99, and he followed along with me. By the time I got to the end of the list, it must have been 15 to 20 minutes of just scanning items, and I gave him his total. Of course, he countered it. He told me that that's not what he got in his calculator, and showed me the math and explained how everything should have been applied. "My mistake, sir. Let's go through it again to make sure everything's right." I cleared the transaction and started over. One more time. All 118 items, reading each price as slowly and clearly as I could, plunking the number keys loudly as I typed them in. Again, another 15 to 20 minutes of just scanning and typing. The customer was looking slightly agitated, but followed along on his calculator. And when I got to the end of the list, the total was exactly the same as before. He shook his head, saying, No, that's not right. There's something wrong with the computer." I watched him go through the math again, retyping everything in. Then, after a moment, he paused, surprised. "Oh, I added one of these in wrong. Okay, you had the right price." I did my best to keep my face as calm and apologetic as possible. "I'm sorry, sir, but after you said the math was wrong, I cleared the transaction again. No worries, we can scan the items back in." So there we went, round 3. 118 items. Me typing in each price manually and reading it out loud nice and slow, so he could be sure I was doing it right. At this point, he had definitely caught on to what I was doing. He quietly said, "Could we hurry it up a little?" So I started reading and plunking a bit faster. Still took a nice 15 minutes to get through the list again, and lo and behold, same price as before. He paid the total without another word and left with his items. I never saw him back in the store again, at least not while I was working. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, number 108. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you have a story yourself you'd like to send in, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. You can find it in the description of pretty much every video. You know, maybe I'm getting cynical in my old age here, but story number 3, was it? Yeah, it was, the one with the umbrella. The umbrella. Forgot how to talk for a second there. I kind of feel, I don't know if they checked security cameras or anything, or if they even had them outside the shop, but I kind of get the feeling that that lady did that to her own windscreen. Because I've seen so many people so far gone in these stories. That was literally what I thought the story was heading initially. I was quite surprised when it turned out it was just the wind, although perhaps the wind was assisted. I don't know. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.